Welcome to Gracefully Greying. I'm your host, attorney Henry Gornbein. Please watch the Henry Gornbein YouTube channel for all of the episodes of Gracefully Greying, and don't hesitate to tell all your friends as we continue to grow Gracefully Greying, not only as a podcast series, but also with our upcoming website, gracefullygreying.com. Today on Gracefully Greying, I'm pleased to welcome as my guest Mindy Eisenberg, who is not only a specialist in yoga, but she deals with people who have movement disorders and really helps turn around their lives. Mindy, welcome to Gracefully Greying.
Thank you.
First of all, why don't you tell us a little bit about how your yoga differs than, typical yoga for someone who doesn't have MS or Parkinson's or some other movement disorder?
So really, all yoga is adaptive, because the idea is that you're not fitting poses, you're not taking your body and putting it into a pose, but rather you have the pose work for you. And all of us have different bodies. We come every day to our yoga mat, to our chair, with a different body, depending upon how we slept the day before, what we ate, what happened right before we're at, right where we're at right now. So we adapt to the person as they present, including myself.
Is it more difficult because you're dealing with people who, some of them have some limits of mobility and others whose lives have been drastically altered?
So I'm going to correct you here.
Okay,
we
please.
focus on abilities rather than disabilities.
Okay.
So in my yoga room, I can't is not allowed. Those are two words, they're not allowed. Actually, we added to this list yesterday.
Well, educate me and our viewers.
Because what happens is, this is common whether it's adaptive yoga or not. I can't do that, I'm not flexible. That is probably one of the most, number one, common misunderstanding about yoga. That you have to be flexible to do it. The truth is, it's the person who has lesser flexibility that stands to gain more from it.
Well, there's a lower bar that you can move from, so to speak.
Oh, there's no low bars and there's no high bars in yoga.
So everyone's different. You're adapting to everyone's personal needs.
Right. And there's no good and there's no bad. I'm not really good at tree pose, and you're not better than me.
I'm not
You're doing tree pose, I'm doing tree pose. In other words, there's no grade here. I integrate mindfulness into what we do. And
tell us what you mean by mindfulness.
So mindfulness, if you think of the word, what comes to mind when you think of mindfulness?
Awareness.
Awareness, that's right. It's awareness, present moment. It's the intention. There's an intention to pay attention at this moment on purpose.
So focusing really on...
It's focusing, but there's a few precepts that go with it.
Tell us.
One of them is non-judgment. Another one, which links right in, is acceptance. Another one that links right into that is loving kindness. These were developed. I didn't make these up. They're actually precepts that came from Buddhism. And then we have people, brilliant people, such as John Kabat-Zinn and Jack Kornfield. They came, there's several of them, who came, Thich Nhat Hanh, who came to this country and said, John's from here and Jack's from here, but they took Buddhist concepts and made them so that they are accessible to anybody. You do not have to be a Buddhist. And they made it acceptable in the clinical world as well. So people can live with the idea it's not a religion to be accepting and to show loving kindness for yourself and others. The idea is if you can be present and without this judgment, you can really know and be a part of what's going on in this moment. We have an epidemic of fear, right? Anxiety is so high and depression. So mindfulness helps us be right here in this moment, rather than, I can get really anxious if I think about what's going to happen next or what already transpired. But if I can be right here, I can be way more grounded. We use that in our yoga practice as well. if somebody has a neuromuscular condition and the condition is chronic and it's always changing, we don't know what we're going to wake up with on any given day, it helps to be grounded. So the practice of mindfulness, of breathing, of meditation, of yoga, of mindful movement, all feeds into this. It's all part of the practice. Yoga is really more of an umbrella term.
Okay.
And then underneath this umbrella of yoga are things like meditation and movement. Some people feel safer calling it mindful movement rather than yoga. So what you think of is the postures. But mindfulness also brings in, and yoga bring in lifestyle choices.
What do you mean by that?
So there's a sister science to yoga called Ayurveda, ancient
Okay.
Ayurveda.
Okay.
And that's a Sanskrit word, but it essentially means the ancient science of medicine, Indian medicine. And so
you're talking very holistically right now.
yes, we are. We're talking very holistically. And that's what happens when we start getting involved in things like yoga or meditation. It starts to trickle into different aspects of our life. Ayurveda in particular looks at, very often, it's lifestyle such as diet. It could be exercise. They base it on time of year, type of body. My body might not do very well with aerobic exercise. I might need lighter or more gentle movement. Someone else may do very well with more of a hardcore practice. So you're, again, tailoring it to the individual. That's why really no yoga is not adaptive, but what's become known as adaptive yoga are these props that we use with the postures. A strap, and by the way, you don't have to buy anything fancy. This is a yoga strap, but you could use an old men's tie. I don't know, you still wear those, or?
I do if I'm going to court, otherwise not. Yeah.
Otherwise not. So you probably have a bunch hanging around.
Oh, yes.
So you don't have to buy a fancy yoga strap. Blankets, people have blankets around, or pillows, and blocks. These you might want to, they're very inexpensive.
Very light, too.
Very light. And these are extremely helpful in building reference, which we'll go over. And how do you use these to find your center in the body? How do you find your inner strength that you didn't know was there? What's super exciting about working with people who have neuromuscular conditions is that I can't comes in their head a lot. But we can help transform that to I can, because they don't realize that they have certain abilities that they thought they didn't have.
Mindy, what made you move into this area? I mean, because it's, well, I think it's admirable what you're doing, and it's probably in many respects more challenging than just being a regular yoga teacher or instructor.
Well, I'm going to differ with you because it's become my passion and I love it. So
but that's
for
important.
Me, yeah, you gotta love what you do. That would be number one. But it's beyond rewarding. I can come into the yoga room, let's say, tired or maybe a little grumpy for whatever reason, because I didn't do my meditation. And I within minutes of being with my students, we're all smiling and giggling.
Now, do you teach at a studio, or do you have your own studio?
Because of what I do is unique, we want to get to as many people as we can. So our classes are in 7 different places in southeastern Michigan. And rather than owning a studio, we just go to the space, whether it's a church, a synagogue, other yoga studios. We have a place we use Fitness Works in Detroit. So we figure they got the space and we use it when they're not using it.
How many are with you? I mean, you've got other instructors as well, don't you?
I have 11 other instructors. There is no way to teach adaptive yoga to people who have certain challenges and ranges of abilities without assistance. So we train people, we mentor them. I feel very fortunate the people who gravitate to adaptive yoga, not only the students, the teachers, are very unique, special, dedicated people. We have become a very strong community.
So you're hands-on because you're helping people move where it's difficult. Correct?
So that is a great word. I like that, hands-on, because it is different. And there's a lot going on in the yoga world. In fact, there was an article in the New York Times about when is it appropriate for a teacher to touch a student. That's pretty controversial. As a lawyer, you may be aware of it.
But here, touching is critical.
Absolutely.
It's an integral part of what
Right.
you're doing.
Absolutely. Now, it's not to say we do the pose for anybody, but we empower them to be able to do the pose. So we assist, whether that means bringing them over a block or helping them place the block in a certain way so that they can do the pose.
What are some of the diseases that you deal with?
I started with MS, multiple sclerosis. That's my baby, my passion. My mother had multiple sclerosis. She had a very progressive type. And so growing up as a little girl, really.
Sure, must have impacted heavily.
I saw the body become just very similar it's kind of similar to Parkinson's. They're similar but not, right? They both have rigidity and spasticity.
Sure.
So from a yogic perspective, from a neuromuscular perspective, we're really approaching it similarly. There's differences, but there's also similarities. Both people with Parkinson's and with MS get stiff. They wake up stiff and their body gets stiff, and they benefit so much from movement. As we said, movement is viewed as medicine. We don't even need a study. There are studies now. I used to, when I first started out, have to prove that it's good for you. But now there's studies, research on yoga for MS, yoga for Parkinson's.
Oh, absolutely.
And what we find is you can see it. You can see it within minutes of them being in the room. If we're practicing breathing, you'll feel the more calm state come into the room. If we're practicing poses, you start to see more ease of movement and joy, actually, in their face and in their body. It's amazing. People with Parkinson's will walk in, and it is a characteristic that there's some flatness and rigidity, and then about halfway through you see these smiles, big smiles, and it's like the whole body is waking up.
Mindy, we've reached a break point, and normally I don't take a break, but we're going to take a break because we're going to come back momentarily because you're going to show people exactly what you do.
You're going to show too, right?
I'm going to be the guinea pig, I guess.
Okay.
And also you have a book, and I don't see it there, but I'd like you to get it. So we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with my guest, Mindy Eisenberg. We are back with my guest, Mindy Eisenberg and Adaptive Yoga. Mindy, you wrote this book. What
Heavy,
prompted you
isn't
to do
it?
this? It's a heavy book. We can use it for yoga.
This book is the result of students asking, when they go home, how are they going to remember what poses to do?
So you really take them through all the basic steps.
So there's hundreds of photos. People love photos. So we did 7 photo shoots for this and tried to get as many students as I could into it so that people could see that yoga's for anybody, all different shapes.
And you're showing people in all different poses with people with all different types of conditions.
Absolutely.
Great.
So it's turned out that a lot of teachers use this book now as a reference. In fact, it's being used at a yoga therapy program at University of Maryland. And what we're doing now is developing cards that go with it. So really, why do people want this? Because they want a reminder, a cue at home. We don't want to just have the yoga practice that you do in your house once a week or at a studio once a week. We want it to become part of a home practice that becomes part of your life, just like brushing your teeth. because that's where the benefits come in.
Exactly. I mean, it becomes your life, your lifestyle, and how you are able to move. And if you have a neurodegenerative disease, it's a way to fight it on a daily basis. So this is really critical what you're doing.
Let's start by breathing.
Okay.
So
I guess I'm going to be
as long as you're breathing, you're doing yoga.
Okay.
And you mentioned that you do some yoga poses, so we'll look at those too.
Maybe.
But what makes yoga poses different, makes yoga poses different is that we're breathing while doing these poses.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just another form of fitness.
Well, breathing's critical. Isn't it the core of everything?
And what we see is when the students enter the room, I've noticed almost every time, when we invite people to pause and to breathe and to be mindful, they welcome it. They welcome it. There are people who are scared because they say, I can't sit, I can't do that. And you can practice breathing lying down, standing, or seated. Let's just, since we're seated right now, take our hands to our belly. Just feel your belly as you breathe without trying to do anything. Notice your inhale. What happens on the inhale? What do you feel the belly doing?
Well, as you're breathing in, it's expanding.
Exactly. And as you exhale, it softens back down.
Exactly.
So with the yoga breath, we look for it to become a little bit more even, maybe a little bit longer over time. But when we're first starting, we're just noticing what is. Very often, by just observing and feeling the breath, it starts to become more balanced, more even, more smooth. What happens when people are anxious to their breath?
When they what? I'm sorry, with your
They're
breath?
Anxious.
You're going to breathe more rapidly and irregularly, so...
Or even non-existent.
Yeah, you stop breathing, you freeze.
You stop breathing. We don't notice it,
Right.
but a lot of times we really don't have a breath flowing. So the reminder to breathe is welcomed. Having said that, that is just a very, very quick be conscious of your breath. The minute you become conscious of your breath, the breath is the glue to awareness in the body. So let's do this before you even rise into some fancy poses. Inhale and take your right arm up towards the sky. Right. Soften your eyeballs. That means just relax, Henry, relax. Exhale, flow the arm down. Beautiful. You just did yoga.
Some.
Inhale, left arm. Lifts up, left arm now. He's back to the right still. Exhale and flow it down. Good, now let's do both arms. Inhale, both arms rise. Good. Relax your shoulders. Oh yeah, see how you just became more conscious? Exhale, flow your arms down. Now while you're seated there, you're gonna do cat-cow in the chair, and I'm gonna do cat-cow on the floor. So you can see how it's adaptive.
Okay.
So you're going to take your hands on top of your knees like they are, and you're going to take your chin to your chest and round like you're an angry cat. That's cat pose. And now you're going to inhale and lift up, get tall, draw your shoulder blades together, lift your heart. That's right, you just did cow. Now go back to cat. You round like this, and then we lift up, draw the shoulders back. Now I'm going to show you, just so you can see, the traditional version of cat and cow. We're on our hands and our knees.
Okay.
We round the spine. It's still chin to chest. We're still rounding the spine one way. And then this is cow pose the other way. So you can see, what was that pose about? That pose is about moving the spine. You were able to do it seated. I did it on my hands and knees. Now, very often, sometimes people have wrist issues going on. People with arthritis or carpal tunnel.
Sure.
So there's different things we can do. One of the most obvious adaptations is to go onto our forearms. And so we can do the same thing on our forearms, and then it relaxes. The wrists don't have to have any pressure on them. All right, you were showing me warrior pose.
Yes. I'm going to get up and do a warrior
Yeah,
pose.
you're going to get up and do the warrior on the mat.
Okay. I'm
So
plugged
for
in.
warrior, we take a nice wide stance, big wide, that's it, look at you. You are a warrior, right? You have to be in your body here. Now I want you to just pull this arm bone back a little bit so your torso's right over your hips. Now relax your shoulders. Breathe. Are you breathing? Inhale. Exhale. Awesome. You can bring your feet back together, and I'll show you what Warrior 2 looks like in the chair. So it's better at home to use without arms on the chair. Like even a regular folding chair can be very helpful. You want to make sure it doesn't slip, so putting it on a yoga mat is a nice thing to do. But this is Warrior 2. They look similar, don't they?
Yes.
This is a hip opener. That's one of the purposes of the pose. And people can still energize their legs seated too. They can push down and press out. There's so many different things. What's really cool about adaptive yoga is that we can literally take a pose, and there's so many adaptations, which is why that book is so large, because once you start going one way with a pose, you can change it to go another way.
So you're personalizing everything to the needs and really the ability of whoever you're working with.
Absolutely. I want to show you how this block works.
Okay.
So chair pose is a really important pose, because chair pose is literally getting up and down from the seat. And how many times do we do that a day?
Many, especially if you're in a or even at home, you're getting up and down, and the key is, I mean, a lot of people can't do it. I mean, I can just. Maybe it's more of a challenge. Is that a better word for it? Okay.
Yes, most people can do a version of it.
Okay.
So you're going to start from standing. I'm going to start from seated.
Okay.
And we're going to do chair pose together. So you're going to bend your knees and sit back in a chair that's not there. That's right. And you might take your arms forward. I'm going to lift off from the chair to come up. Right? But Now, the key is, can we stay down? Now I want you to breathe and feel. What are you feeling? Where is sensation in your body in chair pose?
What's in the knees and hips?
Yeah? So you shouldn't feel pain. I want to make clear, if you're feeling pain, you should not feel pain.
No.
You feeling it any in your thighs?
No.
Really? You must be really strong, Henry.
I work out a lot.
That's awesome. So this is really important. They've done some studies that show that the strength in our thighs is related to our heart health as well as to cardio health, which is pretty fascinating, I think. Stand up for a moment. We're going to put this block in between your thighs. You're going to turn into a giant Pez machine. Did you like those candies?
Okay.
So now you're going to sit back with that chair that's not there. That's
again,
right.
Balancing.
And you're hugging the block. Now I want you to notice, what did it do for you? How did the pose change with that?
Well, there's more pressure on the thighs.
Inner thighs.
Yes.
Did it make it more challenging, or did it help you? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
About the same. I think it helps a little because you got more support.
Exactly. So what happens here is we're turning on our inner thighs,
Right.
which is actually connected to our core. So very often, just putting a block in between the thighs helps people. You know, so we have people, let's say, who can't, they say they can't stand up. We have them rock just like this, because they're starting to turn into their core just by rocking forward and back.
So you're giving, again, more support, and it kind of counterbalances. So
We might, let's say someone feels like their balance is off for the day, but they want to do this pose. We may assist them as teachers and just stand in front of them for them to feel supported. The other thing we may do is put a chair in front of them, so they know when they lift off, there's a chair that's supporting them as well. And at the same time, they get to build their strength.
You're helping, you're counterbalancing and giving them a little more
Giving them
security
confidence.
as they do it.
Yes.
We have 3 minutes.
Tree pose. Let's see your version of tree pose.
Tree pose is,
Yeah, you don't need the black for that. Let's see your version. So here's one version. This we call little baby bush. The foot's at the ankle, right? Yep. You can bring your arms up like that.
this.
Yes.
It's hard to balance.
Yes. So if it's hard to balance, you might take your hand to the chair and use the
like
chair. Know it's there. Now, a focal point, you find something to stare at. That's a yoga trick. Now, is it okay to come out of the pose, Henry? Is it okay just like to come out, you know, like to come back out and start again?
Sure, why
That's
not?
exactly what yoga is, and that's exactly what mindfulness is.
Okay.
So another precept of mindfulness is each time we go to the mat, we're beginning again. Each time you do tree pose, you're beginning again.
Give our viewers 3 takeaways before we sign off. We're, a little less than 3 minutes, but, what you're doing, it's wonderful. It's so important, especially for those of us who are gracefully graying, especially for those who have more challenging issues than those of us who don't. So what you're doing, you're really helping people, the mindful, living in the moment, and also helping people to overcome to some degree, or at least find more of a
It's coping.
peace,
It's living.
helping
living
coping.
life fully.
Exactly, which is the theme of Gracefully Graying. So give us 3 takeaways before
All right,
we
well,
sign off.
number 1 is breathe, right? Yoga teacher would say breathe. Take a pause in your day. Pick something where you can be present. It could be 1 minute. It could be 30 seconds. Just breathe. Just be right where you're at. Standing, sitting, lying down. So pause. Number 2 is get rid of I can't. I can. I can, and I will.
I will, yeah, exactly.
Number 3 is begin again. Fresh, with a beginner's mind, like you've never done tree pose before, like you've never taken a breath before. Enjoy the curiosity.
And I guess say yes, forget about the word no, forget about I can't. You can do it, you will do it, and it's meaningful, and living in the moment can help you live for many, many more moments. Mindy Eisenberg, we're out of time. I want to thank you so much for being my guest on Gracefully Graying, and I want to thank our viewers for watching Gracefully Graying. This is a little different, but this is so important, and you are doing some wonderful work, so thank you so much.
Namaste.
Namaste.